Antwerp sounds like a colony of ants going out to work. Actually, it's a major city in the Flemish part of Belgium. I'm Veronica Lewis, and today on Let's Go Dutch, we're in the hometown of Peter Paul Rubens, Antwerpen.
I'm gonna travel the world. I'm gonna go where the Dutch have been, and I'm gonna share it with you, my friends. Let's go Dutch. Let's go Dutch. Let's go Dutch.
We'll explore an ancient city created when a knight tossed a giant's hand into the river, and then side trip to medieval Ghent with its skyline of church towers. So put on your clogs and let's go Dutch. Napoleon called Antwerp a pistole aimed at England. It was because of its port, so in the 19th century he started building docks to fulfill his vision of trade dominance over England. While located inland, Antwerp had a great lifeline to the sea, and that was a tremendous trade advantage. The Netherlands and Belgium were known as the Low Countries, and their history is quite a complicated labyrinth. Antwerp, however, has a nice, simple, romantic version of the city's origin. Let's turn to our resident storyteller, Billy Eyck.
Was eens. That means once upon a time, there lived a giant. Antwerpen was his name, and extorting tolls from passing ships was his game. And for those who couldn't pay, off with their hand. There came along a Roman soldier one day. Silvius Bravo was his name. He killed the giant and tossed his hand into the river, and the city of Antwerp sprung from that point.
Yeah, a nice romantic tale.
And adding credibility to the tale, Antwerpen in Dutch means hand throw.
I know you were wondering, what's this beautiful square behind me? Well, it just so happens to be the Markt. This spectacular square has a mild resemblance to the Grand Place in Brussels, with all the guild houses. And sporting all the flags is the Stadhuis, dating from 1564. The Stadhuis is in a Flemish Renaissance style, with a little bit of Italian influence as well. There are three coat of arms on the facade. On the left is the Duchy of Brabant, and on the right is Philip II of Spain. In the middle is the Maagvater of Antwerpen. He was like a combined governor and sheriff. In 1576, Spanish soldiers destroyed part of the Stadhuis in a riot known as the Spanish Fury. It was rebuilt within 3 years. The Stadhuis interior is a treat for the eyes. Everywhere you look, you are reminded of the great wealth and prosperity of Antwerp's golden age. There's craftsmanship on display everywhere, from the beams and ceilings to the wall murals and even the chairs. Let me introduce you to some of our friends. Hendrik I. He was the Duke of Brabant in 1183. Mary of Burgundy. She was the daughter of Charles the Bold, and she married Maximilian of Austria. Godfrey of Bouillon. He was an 11th century knight who led the First Crusade of Jerusalem. Philip the Good was Duke of Burgundy in 1419. His son was Charles the Bold. And finally we have Jan I. He was the Duke of Brabant in 1267. Trouwen means marriage. The trouwzaal is the marriage hall. And I think there's a wedding going on right now, in fact. Let's go have a peek of the happy couple.
And now for the row of guild houses.
The Spanish Fury also ate quite a bit of the houses lining the Markt. They were rebuilt in the original Flemish style. Most date from around 1580. However, some are completely original. Den Engel, that means the angel. Here we have the guild houses of the old and new crossbowmen. That's St. George slaying the dragon on top. Now you probably couldn't help noticing that right now the Markt is set up for a big event. While the bleachers are blocking a lot of the guild houses, it's also giving us some great views of the ornate tops that we wouldn't have gotten at street level. One cannot help but notice that spire poking high above Antwerp's skyline.
It's the Onze Lieve Vrouw Cathedral. Practice that. You're going to be tested on it later. Onze Lieve Vrouw Cathedral.
It means Cathedral of Our Dear Lady. Did you know that's the highest spire in the Low Countries? One day in 1352, a crew came and set up shop, and they placed signs all around. Coming soon, Onze Lieve Vrouw Cathedral. Sorry for the inconvenience. And inconvenient it was, because they didn't finish until about 1520.
It was guys like this who built the skyscraper. There are 3 dates of historical importance. And there's Billy Eyck to tell us about them.
The first is 1533, when a fire came and ate everything. Then in 1566, religious iconoclasts came marauding through. In 1794, the French came in and sold off anything not nailed down. I seem to be nailed down. You go on with Veronica, I'll catch up.
There are 4 paintings by Peter Paul Rubens in here.
This one is from 1610. It's the Raising of the Cross. Rubens had been in Italy, and this painting was his first commission upon returning. From 1614, The Descent from the Cross, commissioned by the Arquebusiers Guild. They wanted their patron saint Christopher to be portrayed. Saints, however, were forbidden in art of the Reformed churches. Christopher means holder of Christ, so Rubens made each figure holding Christ. Painted in 1612, this is the Resurrection. This one, Rubens painted in 1626, and it's the Ascension of the Virgin. Peter Paul Rubens. He's best known for painting women of a plump kind. Well, this was his town, and he bought himself a lovely home on a street called Whopper.
I know what you were thinking. This must be where the Burger King comes from. Nay, that's Whopper. This is Whopper. We'll get into that later. But for now, let's check out Rubens' house. Peter Paul Rubens. If he had a schizophrenic female personality, she surely would have been named Mary. Where was I? Oh yeah, PPR, as he's known in the hood, bought this house in 1610.
Steen in Dutch means stone. Het steen means the stone and refers to a coffee shop that stood on this site in the 16th century.
Nay, Billy Eyck. While it does mean stone, it refers to the stone castle that still sits here today. At the time it was built, Billy Eyck, you were around then. When was that?
1520.
Houses were made mostly of wood.
Castles and palaces like this were typically called het Gravensteen.
One might think that means gravestone.
It does look like that, but graven is the plural of graf, and graf means count, so this was the count's stone.
My stone! Not your stone. Get your own stone.
And when fires forced new houses to abandon wood in favor of brick and stone, everyone did just that. And they built their stone just a stone's throw from the count's stone.
In the mid-1500s, William the Silent was headquartered in Antwerpen. This was during the Protestant Reformation, and Antwerpen was a Protestant city. The Spanish Inquisition was also going on during this time period, and William was fighting against the Catholic Spanish for freedom of religion. Spain's merciless battles to suppress Dutch Protestantism sparked the 80 Years' War and independence for the Low Countries. Remember we were talking about Wapper? Not lunch, Wapper. He's Lange Wapper. He was a shapeshifter, so he could be a little kid or he could stretch himself into a giant. He frequently used this elasticity to peer into ladies' windows, with whom he was quite fond of. But he wasn't so fond of the drunks. Maybe it was because he lived along the river, and the men coming out of the bars at night were always making too much noise. Feeling a little hungry, are you? Natuurlijk. This used to be the Vleeshuis, the meat market. Built in 1501, the brick ground floor was the only meat market in town. The Butchers' Guild had their offices above. Gee, I bet it smelled awfully good up there in the summer. On the way from Central Station, did you notice the avenue lined with magnificent houses? That's Meer. Meer is now the main shopping street, but in the 13th century, it was swampy land outside the city. By the 15th century, it was a wide street with a canal in the middle. In the 16th century, the canal was paved over, and this became the place to be for the wealthier folk. We're going to head southeast now to the capital of the Oost-Vlaanderen region. Hello, ladies and gents. We're in Ghent. Ghent is often referred to as the sister city to Bruges, but in the Middle Ages, there was actually quite a bit of sibling rivalry going on.
In the beginning, they were Celts and Romans. Then in the 7th century, a Frank came along and built 2 abbeys. Vikings came along doing their thing, pillaging, plundering. Around 800, Baldwin, the Count of Flanders, built a castle here to protect the abbeys and towns. That officially put Ghent on the map of Flanders.
Is that it?
No, it's just getting started. The town grew rich with the wool trade. However, all of the Low Countries had bad times coming. In 1540, a local boy named Charles was made Holy Roman Emperor and King of Spain too. Known as Charles V, he wasn't too thrilled when Ghent grew tired of paying his high taxes, which he tended to use for military campaigns against France. The town revolted, and Charles unleashed his wrath. Charles is long gone, but the castle still remains. It's called the Gravenstein, and it's where we'll be heading in a few. But right now, let's get back to our lovely tour guide, Veronica.
This section was part of the original port of Ghent. On this side, we have the Graaslei, and on this side, the Cornlei, which means corn quay. The Graaslei side is lined with guild houses and warehouses. The guilds were the unions of the Middle Ages. The bridge at the end is the St. Michielsbrug, and it's where we find the most photographed spot in Ghent. Let's first check out the guild houses. First, we have the Masons Guild, the Gildehuis van de Metselaars. This is actually their second guild house. We'll happen upon the first one later. Dating from the 15th century, the Eerste Korenmaiders House, which is the first house of the Cornweighers Guild. The tough-looking building next door was a grain warehouse from 1200. That's pretty old, and that would explain the Romanesque look. It was the Cornstapel House. The Cornstapel here. cute little house sandwiched in between is the Tolhuisje, the little customs house. This is the Teveda Cornmaker's house, the second guild house of the corn weighers. It's from 1698 and in a Baroque style. Next door is Gothic of the Brabant sort. From 1531 and sporting all the nautical scenes, it's the Gildehuis der Vrije Schippers. That's the Guild of the Free Bargemen. Oh, Billy has something to share, so I'm gonna put on my cameraman's hat.
The barges were the boats used to carry goods along the canals. So on this side, we have the guild house of the Vrije Schippers. But right across the canal, we have the Gildehuis de Onvrije Schippers, the unfree bargemen. Kind of like a union for the non-union. Now back in 1740, these non-unis had to unload their barges outside the city and onto the barges of the Vrije Schippers, who controlled the inland shipping routes.
It's good to be in a union. And speaking of union jobs, on the end here we have the post office. It was built in 1906 in a Gothic style. That makes it neo-Gothic. Let's gild this lily with a fine view from Sint Michielsbrug. This is the classic postcard of Ghent, with the towers all lining up, and of course the wonderful view of the Graaslei. Our first stop in medieval Ghent is the Belfort and the Lockenhall. The Belfort was built between 1313 and 1380. It has a 52-bell carillon. 37 of those bells were cast in 1660. You'll be happy to know that in addition to steps, the Belfort also has a lift to the top. Connected to the Belfort is the Lockenhall. The Lockenhall was the cloth hall and was the meeting place for the cloth and wool traders. It dates from 1425. This square is St. Balfsplein, no doubt named for St. Balf's Cathedral, sitting right over there. And over there we have the Royal Theatre, which was built in 1891. If you go see a show there, you'll be able to tell your friends back home. And then we went to the Koninklijk Vlaamse Schouwburg. They started building St. Balf's around 1290, but there are some remnants from 100 years before. There's a lot of history in here, and some treasures.
Historically, this wasn't anything more than a local church, but then Charles V had the St. Bavo's Abbey demolished. The monks packed up their relics and moved in here. One of those relics was a bone from St. Bavo's arm, so this church was on its way to cathedral status. Then in 1561, a diocese was established here, and the church was automatically upgraded to the St. Balf's Cathedral.
So from economy to first class. Wow, good upgrade. Let's go have a peek and see what they got with that upgrade. The treasures inside include a painting by Rubens and a Rococo pulpit made in 1745. The star of the show is an altarpiece by Jan van Eyck, Het Lam Gods, the Lamb of God, painted in 1432. This is the Stadthaus. It looks like an architectural timeline. We have Gothic from around 1500, Renaissance from 1580, and Baroque and Rococo thrown in as well. The Renaissance portion wasn't finished yet back in 1576 when the pacification of Ghent was signed here. This is the Pacificatiezaal. Zaal means hall, and Pacificatie refers to the pacification of Ghent document signed in this hall. It was a big deal. While under the Spanish Habsburg rule, the Low Countries were divided along religious lines. The northern Dutch provinces were mostly Calvinist Protestant, while the southern part of Holland and Flemish Belgium remained loyal to Catholic Spain. The declaration made here ended the religious bickering and united the Low Countries against the Spanish Habsburgs. Across from the Stadthaus is a hotel, the St. Jorishof. It must have been here a long time. Maria of Burgundy stayed here in 1477. At that time, the hotel bar didn't have a liquor license, so Maria had to bring her own Burgundy. The name St. Jorishof means Court of St. George. The crossbowmen had their guild house here. St. George, who according to legend killed a dragon, is the patron saint of the crossbowmen. This is the Gravenstein. It literally means the Count's Stone. It was built by Philip of Alsace, the Count of Flanders, in 1180. Philip built his castle on top of the ruins of Baldwin's castle. In addition to defense against invaders, the Count also had to contend with the people themselves, who were constantly complaining and rebelling. This house is the Huis der Gegronde Hoofden. Gegronde means crowned, and Hoofden means heads. These are the Counts of Flanders and Habsburg rulers. Check out this whimsical house. This house is from 1527, and it's the original Bricklayers Guild House. The guild house we saw on the Graaslei was their new guild house, and this was their old crib. This is the Vrijdagmarkt, the Friday market. The turreted house with the mermaid on top is the Torken. It's the oldest house in the square and once belonged to the Tanners Guild. Tanning was a part of the processing of leather. In Dutch or Vlaams, as it's known in Flanders, this is called a standbeeld. And as you can see, it's built to stand. That's Jacob van Artevelde. He's the wise man of Ghent. Because of his support of the English king, he was able to keep Flanders neutral while England was embroiled in the 100 Years' War with France. The cloth trade even flourished in this time period. Delagrete. Delagrete. Old pub. Old cannon from 1450. Known for firing off great Belgian beers that can rip your head right off. Known for firing off giant stone balls that can rip your head right off. Delagrete means Mad Meg, and it's Flemish folklore about a mad, crazy woman who led an army of women to hell.
Antwerpen and Gent, two fantastic Flemish cities, and easy day trips from Brussels, Bruges, and even Amsterdam. Of course, nothing beats staying overnight, strolling moonlit cobblestone streets and floodlit medieval buildings, and of course, someone you love to share it with. I'm Veronica Lewis. Join us again next time on Let's Go Dutch as we explore more of Holland, Flanders, and beyond. Tot ziens!
Tot ziens!